Welcome to Stoke Meter, and welcome Angela Kim. How the heck are you?
I couldn't be better.
I like to hear it.
It's all good today.
Way too long since we last spoke, right?
It's been too long. I missed the craziness, man.
It is, right? Oh my goodness.
We got to do more of that.
It's going on. Well, it has to be close to 25 years.
Oh yeah.
I met you back in 1996.
Yeah, long time.
That was a long time ago, man.
You just dated us, man.
Yeah, man. We're old, man. We're old.
We totally are.
The beauty of it is the way that I met Angela is at the time I was working at, then it was called Allied Signal. Today, everyone knows it as Honeywell. And you're wondering, what does that have to do with being stoked? And to your point, I agree, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot.
It was crazy.
But at the time, Angela was a client. She was at McDonnell Douglas, which eventually got bought out by Boeing. And as a customer of ours, it was really cool to make that connection because she allowed me to bring people to their site that worked for us to see what it was that the end product, what our end product did for their product that they were making. And as a result of that, it had a significant impact on the story that was told back at the plant. And today, Angela is the site manager for one of the Caterpillar sites. And,
yes.
And you gotta explain what Caterpillar is for those that might not know what it is.
So for those of you who don't know, it's Caterpillar is the big brand name for earth moving, mining equipment, those kinds of things. So I'm at the North Little Rock facility, and we make tons of really great products for our customers, moving earth, so to speak. So just awesome. I mean, if I think about my career over time, since the time that you and I have met, till now, man, it has been a whirlwind, and it's amazing, in terms of just being stoked, where you can really go in your career. If you really think about it, you and I met on happenstance and chance. 25 years later, man, we're like pulling forward, trying to figure it out and talking to people and getting people excited about what they can really do as well. So I think that's pretty awesome.
And that communication is still getting, and Gary's in healthcare, right? And you talk about another crazy place where communication typically doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to say it's kind of interesting. I'm over in Tucson, and Caterpillar has a big presence over here as well.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. I had a buddy a while back that took me out to their they call it their test facility, but basically it's where you go play with big toys.
Oh, and
yeah. I'll tell you, I mean, people that don't understand Caterpillar, I mean, you're talking heavy equipment, you're talking some huge stuff. But
yeah,
what I think is intriguing though is you came from, you said what, McDonnell Douglas?
Yeah, so then, I'll walk you guys through a bit, Gary.
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
Oh yeah.
Certainly, my days of first meeting Maurice, but I come out of the military and wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my life at that time. Just kind of making it happen, and got hired by McDonnell Douglas, and I think at the time I met you, I was into about my second job there. Right. And I become a training manager training manager at McDonnell Douglas, which was for me awesome. About 5,400 employees, could not have been just wilder for me, and just, crazy stuff, and so, you look at your career and you go, how do you go from being a training manager, or even before that, my Air Force wrench turning days, right? How do you go from that to Caterpillar, factory manager, right?
Exactly. Running an entire site, man.
It's not easy. But, I think, the thing I've realized is you have to just be really open. whether it's dealing with your customers, new people you might meet, your own development, you just have to be really open. And I got some real hard coaching at times, which helped me clean up my game. And sometimes I just listened a lot and made some moves. But, in that time period, I've been in aerospace. I did a stint over in the chemical side in Japan. I worked in Italy, and and finally over through semiconductor to CAT. And it's crazy what you don't know. You don't know how much you're capable of until you just do it. And you try to say yes more than you say no.
So where did that come from? Let's roll us back a few years, because I always think it's intriguing. Like, we see you now as like, the things that you've accomplished, but even before the military, let's take us back to when you were younger. How did you develop that kind of attitude and that go-getiveness, I guess you could put it?
So I think it comes from a couple things. So I'm number 8 out of 9 kids. So
You're a survivor.
I'm a survivor. Then I learned how to thrive, right? So I was fighting for, the last pizza, so you come through that world. And then, I had an event now that I mark as, I say, fairly significant, in that I wanted to be a baseball player, right? And
interesting.
Back in that time period, girls didn't really play Little League baseball, but my brothers did. And I knew I was at least as good as my brothers. So I was like, wait a minute.
I hope they're not listening,
completely wrong here. So I went to my dad. And so I think it speaks too about, the type of people you have in your life. And my father, instead of saying, no, girls don't play, he went, heck yeah, you are good. So my dad took me to sign up for Little League. Back then, I was 9 years old, just about to have my 10th birthday. And my father said, you could play. And he went in. And so what it really, why this is such a defining moment is we were told no, right? Wasn't going to happen. Girls didn't play, whatever that is. And my father stood there and he said, I'm not leaving here until she's playing. And yeah,
that's awesome.
And you gotta picture my dad. My dad was about 5'2". And he was taking on a kind of a board, a sign up board. And he says, I'm not leaving until she signed up. And sure enough, I left there with my ball cap. I had my team and my t-shirt, and I was ready to play. And I played every game for 2 years until I aged out. And it just made such a huge difference to have that support. And along the way, my brothers came to every game. So, it speaks to just having like a level of support beyond just what we talk about. I mean, there's Title IX and all of that stuff was going on at that time. That's, about that time period. But it was really more about, who's going to stick up for you and hang out with you. My father, I tell you what, was everything in that way. And it really set me off on a career path that I wouldn't have imagined at this point. Honestly, you can't think about what that one incident will do for you.
It's
have you ever talked to your dad about that by chance? I'm sorry, Marie.
No. Go ahead, because I got a follow-up question to that one. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious. Have you ever told your dad what that meant to you?
Yeah, my father since passed away, but we talked about it, several times. During that time period, obviously there would have been some pushback, even going to the games.
Sure.
But as I grew up, I made a lot of non-traditional choices that my father, said, okay, sounds like a plan to me. And my brothers were the same. And so my military career, which would another big milestone for me, I was an Air Force mechanic. I think there were 2 women on the flight line.
Oh man.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so I did. I've talked to my father, since talked to other male members of my family for sure about the importance of that level of support.
Love it. You know, it's interesting because one of the first, when we first brought back the podcast, the person that I interviewed was a person that started her own company.
Oh, wow.
And to see the corollaries there with the support that the father gave, and then subsequently the entire family gave, went a long way into this individual's success and confidence. It was amazing. Not saying that it's solely built upon that, but it's just interesting to see that there are some commonalities here of that support system. And since that time, what's been interesting, now I understand why you have that sense of confidence that was very evident when I first met you. It really was. And I'm just wondering, as life went on, you were in a lot of different areas where it was very non-traditional to have someone, a woman, to come in. So how did you deal with that? And I'm going to kind of craft it a little bit, because every time I saw you communicate with an individual, whether that was a leader, a colleague, a direct report, you were consistent across the board. And you could have the tough conversations in a way that is very rare to see, quite frankly. And I'm just wondering, how did all the learning that you made in your youth, how did that help you to solidify that communication process? And what other things have you learned since that time? I know that's a lot. I'm sorry.
It is a lot, but it probably comes down to a couple things. First is, you have a sense of humility, right? I think if nothing else, I started with, hey, I just want to try, man. If I can get in the game, I can make it happen. So if, you start with a sense of humility and I just want to compete, right? Just let me compete. So I might have to convince you to let me get in the game.
How did you convince him? How did you convince him? How about that?
I think it's a good bedside manner. I can't think of a better way to describe it. Maybe, Gary, you get that in healthcare, but sometimes it's the sidebar conversation. It's understanding where that person's coming from, walking a mile in their shoes. Why was it so important, for those things to happen? Remaining respectful for why they think, what they think, and then saying, there's just got to be a different way, another way. And I think, it's a part of just kind of that respect and humility that I think comes forward. I want you to be the best you can be, and I want to be the best I can be. And if we land on that common ground, I think we're in good shape. So I think it's just those two items. It's not hard.
You know what I think, Maurice was kind of telling me about how you guys, your interaction and kind of the stuff you guys went through. And if I had to guess what your secret sauce is, and I think you already touched on it a little bit, is first of all, you're willing to really listen to people. You want to know where they're coming from. And then, and like you said just now, there's also, you have that level of respect for where they're coming from. You may not agree with them, but you respect where they're coming from. And I think that's something that gets lost in today's society, is people don't want to listen. They just want to get to what they want to say. You know what I mean? And I think it's shown in your career through all the diverse areas that you've worked in, is that's a skill that can carry you through any industry, any type of business, any type of human interaction, which I think is really cool. And Maurice is actually very good at that as well, as you know.
Yeah, I think about our first interaction, and Maurice, he touched on it, coming into the factory, but, I go back, I actually came to visit him. So he didn't tell you that part, right? I actually remember stepping into the factory, and he took me on, a very extensive tour. And I left there, as a result of our conversations, understanding things that you were doing that we weren't doing. I thought, I want that, right? And so it was a bit of a competition in that way, but also, I recognized at that time I was learning. He was teaching, and again, listen more than you speak. And I learned a lot from just that first interaction in that way. It's just, you have to be present in situations. I think you're right. Things get lost now. They get covered up. conversation's not as transparent as it needs to be because you're afraid, of the thing you may say. And, if you can knock down those walls of fear, whether it's in what you're trying to do or what you're trying to say or where you're trying to go, I think that's most important. You got to knock that fear down. You can't be afraid on that new challenge, that new person, even if it's not something that you want or you would even think to do.
Be vulnerable, I think, is kind of how I look at it too.
What's interesting, Angela, is right before that tour, we just started a program, and I was a newbie in the shop. I actually asked if I could go work on the assembly line just to understand what they were doing. And I remember going up to the executive administrative assistant out there, and she goes, "The last thing we need is a blankety-blank college boy telling us what to do." And I go, I'm afraid of you. and to your point is what do you do at that point? And to me, it was easy. I go, well, tell me why you feel that way, man. And literally, I do it. I'm approaching it just the way I approach it. But to your point, so many times we're stifled by that fear, whether it be an environment, whether it be a shop environment, political environment, whatever it might be. All these things could be potential kindling to something much more crazy if we're not careful about it. But staying careful, I'm wondering how do you approach those things that are tough to talk about? Because I'm looking at everything that you've done, and it really is going back. It's a very male-dominated type of business that you've been in, and the sports and everything else. And as long as I've known you, you have never been one to approach it by, "This stinks, man. This sucks. Woe is me." You've always took it head on. And just wondering if you can share your secret sauce to that. We've said secret sauce a couple of times, but I definitely believe there's a secret sauce to how you approach it.
Yeah, some of it's just grit, right? We don't talk about grit enough. Some of it's just grit. You just don't accept no for an answer. I have a standing rule that says you got to tell me no 3 times before I believe you. So you start there, but I go back to the humility and respect and just understanding that perspective. And again, if you can knock that fear down that person may have of you for whatever reason, right? Sometimes it's things that you can measure with your eyes. Sometimes it's things that they just don't understand and they've never been exposed to. If you can start to, knock some of those walls down, I think you get to a point where you can have a conversation. Now, you may disagree, and then at that point, you got to tell me no 3 times. But, I think if you start with that, you can have a lot of conversations. Something we don't say enough is words don't hurt. We don't say that enough. We think about words hurting in terms of our emotional content. But the reality of it is you can get hurt by a lot of things. Words will never knock you out of the box, right? They might stop you. They may make you think. They may change your opinion. But, long-term words don't hurt. You learn from those. And yeah, I mean, I've had situations where things have happened to me, certainly. But, you get back up and you realize it's just, a list of, of the alphabet strung together in a certain way. I really don't care.
You're awesome.
Words too. There's 26 letters available to all of us. So let's figure it out. It's a finite group, so to speak. There's nothing out there you can't do in that way. But if that fear is in your way, you won't approach it. You won't make it happen.
It's kind of the power of communication, but also the limitations of what communication can actually do to someone. I think you found that kind of perfect balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm like any other adult. I've had to live through my teen years too. So
yeah. Well, and I've said this before, and I feel pretty strongly about this, is the older I get, the more I realize we're still a bunch of second graders on the playground. I mean,
Amen.
we just have bigger toys and you know, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed.
You know, it's a popularity contest to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So you got to figure out how to be popular, man, from the time you're, you know, a preschooler to the time you hang up, you know, your shingle, I guess. So you just got to figure out how to be popular. And it ain't easy, as they say.
Yeah, but I think that popularity thing changes over time. I think the older we get, popularity comes from being a genuine, caring, you know, someone that is legit, as opposed to, well, I just look handsome or whatever it is. You know what I mean? I think there's that. The definition of popularity gets older. It's like the difference between your 10-year reunion and your 20-year reunion. 10-year, everybody's still trying to say, look at me. 20-year, we're all fat and don't care anyway. And it's like, hey, are you a good person?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what authenticity really is about, right? It's just being who you are. You know, how do you present that as a package, you know, and how is it received? And please don't get your feelings hurt if, you know, someone doesn't receive it well. You still got 2 more shots.
Look, we do talk about popularity a lot, and this actually came in another interview. A lot of people will actually do a lot to become that popular. And Gary, going back to your point, we're all second graders still, and heck yeah, second graders. I like the part where we're having fun. And I'm just wondering, when you went through the military and everything else since that time, how did you balance seeking popular versus developing yourself and into that person that, because you're true to yourself, you then become popular? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. You know, by nature, I'm an introvert. And so it wasn't easy for me to be popular. You know, I didn't have all of the bells and whistles that popular people do. And, you know, let's start with extroversion, you know. So, you know, so I think you figure it out there. I think the balance is, I recognize that introversion was probably going to be, you know, my greatest strength and my greatest weakness, so to speak. And that might sound somewhat cliche, but I think it is. You know, I realized I had to take on extroversion in a certain way, in the way that I could authentically. And I think that was, you know, a part of it, just recognizing who I was. I knew I had to develop, and I could not stay, you know, a mouse. I couldn't be in the background all the time. People were going to demand things of me. Hey, they might want to even take your picture, you know.
You know what you remind me of is like the kind of difference between the going back to that kind of sports field is, you know, you'll see the guys that have all the talent in the world. They're just like, it comes naturally. It's so easy that a lot of times those are the guys that don't make it in sports.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you got the guys that kind of just have the foundational stuff, but they work their tail end off and struggle, you know, and put themselves out there. A lot of times those are the people that really become successful. And that's what I hear with like your story is, as an introvert, you know, you talk, you know, you mentioned grit, you mentioned work, you know, I mean, it sounds like that was kind of your pathway, is let's do this, you know?
Yeah, you got to do the work. You know, regardless of how popular you are, you have to do the work and you have to be good at it. So, you know, you can't get to where you are by just sucking. I mean, if you suck, forget it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, all those other things kind of go away. You really have to get the work done, and you have to be known for that. You know, performance is everything, you know, when you start to really look at it, but behavior is part of performance. I don't separate the two. And I think, you know, oftentimes we try to separate them. I don't know how you can. I think they're, you know, intertwined in a way. So, you know, I behave in such a way, you know, my behavior is going to be measured for sure. It's, you know, someone's going to decide whether or not it's appropriate or inappropriate, but also it's going to be the same for my performance. They're measured in my way the same. Somebody's always going to tweak you and try to figure it out, and
Yeah.
whether or not you're doing the right things. But just be true to yourself.
Well, you're so good at developing yourself. Quite frankly, I didn't even know you were an introvert. Because every time that we met, unless I gave you a Myers-Briggs test or a DISC test, I wouldn't have known that. I would have thought that was a trait that was secondary to have you think. And to your point, you've developed yourself for yourself rather than to impress anyone else. And I think that is something that should be recognized, because so oftentimes we have an exterior force that we're trying to do it for rather than ourselves, and that's why you're you. It's why I've appreciated the friendship over the course of so many years, and I'm sure that even over at Caterpillar they recognize that on a day-to-day basis too. Angela is interested in my development. I can see that she's committed to that development, and all of a sudden you're having that multiplier effect, right? It's amazing.
Yeah. What's really interesting, I came to Caterpillar, I've actually only been here a couple months. And, when you come into an organization wearing a mask, it is a very different experience. I really don't know what everyone looks like yet.
For better or worse.
One of the guys took his mask off the other day. I said, man, I had no idea you had a red beard. I just don't know, right? But, I think it takes away the superficial. The masks cover up a lot, but they also take away a lot. And it took away, for me, one thing was the superficial. You really have to be authentic with your mask on. People really have to pay attention, listen, interact with you, because that mask is a barrier to so many things that you can measure with your eyes. And so it takes that away. And so now you get measured on the things you do.
You continue to teach me, because again, masks are always conducive to hiding, and you're using it as an opportunity to see people how they really are. What a great analogy.
Yeah. And one day we're going to come out of these masks, right? And we're going to see people, for who they were born to be. But you will know them in their heart by then. And so all of those things that you might have measured with your eyes will be immaterial, because now that person is an authentic human being. You know who they are. You've worked with them, they perform, they've behaved, appropriately. They've done all the things you need them to do. So for me, the mask right now, I'm using that as a tool, in terms of my own development. It makes me pay attention differently. It makes me listen more. You have to listen more intently. We all have on masks. We all lean in a little further right now just to make sure we hear that last word. And so, for the soft-spoken, for those who have bigger voices, outdoor voices, the mask really covers up a lot.
Yeah, it's been a real challenge. Yeah, it's been a real challenge in healthcare, even because there's so much that you learn about, say, like a patient or anything like that by looking at their face, looking at those little cues and nuances. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think, yeah, it's kind of awesome to hear you talk about the positive aspects of a kind of a negative situation, but you're absolutely right. I think everybody that has tried, our communication and kind of assessment of other people has increased. And so, yeah, just like Marie said, I mean, that's actually really cool. I haven't thought about that portion of this whole issue like that.
And now
I think it became really, I think I really started to ping on it a bit when, coming here, because I didn't know anyone, they didn't know me. So the person they were going to get to know was going to be the person behind that mask. And it should be a good experience.
Love
so
it.
as someone coming into a massive organization at a high level, what are your initial goals? You're jumping into the deep end. How do you approach that? Like, what are your top priorities?
I looked at 30, 60, 90. coming in. I'm on 60 now. My first 30 days was to get to know the team, because I think you work with and for those individuals you get to know, right? We all go back to the same car dealership for that reason. You've gotten to know them, you trust them, they do good work. And until you get that piece in place, I think it's really difficult. So I spent the first 30 days with conversations and walking a mile in their shoes. I don't invite people to my office. I invite myself to their office. I think you have to spend that time. The next 60 days is assessing where you are, what their needs are, what's going to be most beneficial, for the organization, and how does that align with, with employee needs, company needs, all of those things. So I think you have to find that alignment in that first, that next 60 days. My next 90 days now is to get through the forming and storming, because I think that's important. Now, okay, we've done, the good stuff. We know each other. We have a reasonable work, understanding. We're aligned in terms of where we need to be. Now we need to figure out how to be teammates. And that's where things like, even for some of your listeners, it's the baseball aspect for me. I can be the second baseman, the third baseman. It just depends on, what my role is. But I can't be the third baseman and the catcher at the same time. So
exactly right. Yep.
How to be a teammate.
Yep. Well, and I know you said you're on tight schedule. I don't want to take too much time, but there is one thing I want to know. And that is, in your years now in military and organizations, what are some of the golden nuggets that you would share from your life's learning? What were the most important lessons that you've learned along the way? I know that's a tough question, but at the same time, I've seen you live so many things that I could trickle in there, but just what are those?
So I think the first lesson, it took me the longest to learn, was how to trust. How to be trustworthy and trust others. I think, the 98% come with a vision of doing all the right things at the right time. They may not have all the right skills and knowledge, but I don't think anyone comes into the world saying, I just want to be bad. I want to be bad at things. Yes. I had to learn to trust. And that was something that was pointed out to me very early on. Is probably the thing that's taking me the longest to master, if I've mastered it at all. So I would say, find someone you can trust, someone that you can share with, that you're comfortable with, that can get you comfortable with others. I would say it is absolutely necessary in any working relationship, any partnership, any teammate situation, any team, that you develop that trust. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is listen, and learn as much as you can. I had a mentor early on who said, take all the dirty jobs, you'll learn more. And he was dead on. I mean, the guy couldn't have been more, he couldn't have been more right. And what he meant really for me was, there are going to be opportunities that are going to come that are going to be easy for you. Don't avoid them. But they're going to be ones that are very difficult. Take those. And you'll learn a lot more. You'll learn what other people do, and you'll understand why some things are in the too hard pile. We've all been in companies, right, where there's a tricky aspect of the work, but no one wants to do it. I'll take that. How much time do I have?
You go ahead. Keep on going. I like these lessons.
I mean, from that aspect, I really mean that, though. How much time do I have to figure it out? If you guys haven't been able to figure it out, and I'll take it on, but what's my timeline? So it's really understanding that. And I use the analogy, the second base, the third base, because it's actually how I started playing baseball. I started playing baseball because, I was good at catching the ball. Maybe arm was a little weak, couldn't throw as well. I'll play second base. play third base the next year. I took it on, man. Yeah, I worked on my arm, no problem from third to first. And, I think that kind of thinking stays with me.
That's
That
awesome.
is great sage advice. I love it. I love it, Angela. And
Third to first, man.
it is diverse, but it makes you who you are and who I have appreciated for so many years.
Maurice, I got to tell you, man, I think of you often. I always see your smile. It's great to see it again. Hey, man, I'm always here for you for sure.
You are a rock star, and I thank you big time. And it goes the same right back at you. I love it. I love it. Well, what would you say, anything that you'd say to the audience in parting?
Knock down that fear. Don't be afraid. If you got to be stoked, you cannot be afraid. Stoked is honestly, I'm not surprised you're a stoke meter guy. No, seriously, man. I can see going and taking it on. You're stoked. You're excited. There's an emotional content. There's a skill content to being stoked, but you cannot be afraid. And people who are stoked are not afraid.
I love it. You are awesome. Thanks so much. Well,
I appreciate you guys.
Well, if there's anything that you need, give us a buzz, okay?
Absolutely.
I'm always there for you, Gary. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, absolutely. It's so good to be part of you guys' little community, man. It's awesome. And we will catch you on the next bounce. Thanks so much again, Angela.
Hey, stay stoked, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. See ya.
Thanks.